one of the compliments we admire most is actually doing more harm than good. When we call someone a natural leader, it sounds nice, encouraging even. But hidden inside that compliment is a message. Leadership is something you're born with. You either have it or you don't. And that belief shapes who raises their hand and who stays silent. Some people step back before they ever begin, not because they lack ability, but because they assume leading isn't for them. Others step forward early, but once they're labeled natural, it's easy to mistake potential for progress. If leadership is supposed to come easily, then effort feels unnecessary. And when we decide who can lead before anyone even tries, talent and effort never get the chance to matter. I know this because I've lived on both sides of this label. In 7th grade, I ran for vice president of my student body. It felt like a no-brainer. I had been called a natural leader for years. Teachers said it, friends said it, adults said it. So I assumed winning would follow. But I didn't prepare much. I wrote a speech, but I didn't spend time actually connecting with people or understanding what they cared about. I didn't plan how I would lead or take the time to develop real ideas that meant something to others. I didn't think I needed to. I believed that if some people already saw me as a leader, the title would naturally follow. As you probably guessed, I lost. I remember feeling genuinely confused. I had the label. I was supposed to win. So the next year, I ran again, but for president. And this time, I treated leadership differently. I worked for it. I paid attention to my presence. I put myself out there in ways I never had before, like initiating conversations and stepping outside my usual friend group. While I didn't become best friends with everyone, I connected with people. This time, I won. But more important than winning was what I realized. Being called a natural leader didn't help me succeed. Leadership wasn't something I had. It was something I did. But that's only half the story. At the same time, I was president of our school's community service club. I loved it, and I wanted to build a strong team around me. So I encouraged my friends to run for officer positions. Almost every one of them said no. Not because they didn't care, not because it would be too much work, and not because they wouldn't enjoy it. They said no because they were afraid of losing. They would say things like, "I'm just not good at that kind of thing," or "I wouldn't win anyway." The common theme? None of them had ever been called natural leaders. They didn't see losing as part of growth. They saw it as proof that they couldn't lead. I failed because I assumed leadership would come naturally. They failed because they never even tried. Same myth, different outcomes. According to the Center for Creative Leadership, people develop leadership through experience, which is why the idea of the natural leader is misleading. The problem with the idea of a natural leader is that it turns leadership into a personality instead of a skill. Personalities feel fixed because you're stuck with the one you have. But quite the opposite, skills are dynamic. No one is born able to shoot a perfect free throw. You practice, miss, adjust, and improve. Leadership functions the same way. Listening, making decisions, and handling conflict are learned behaviors, not genetic traits. This myth also creates pressure for people who are labeled natural leaders. If leadership is supposed to come easily, then failure feels unacceptable. Struggling feels like proof that you were mislabeled. Instead of experimenting or asking for help, people hide their mistakes. When we treat leadership as a skill, failure is part of the process. When we treat it as a personality, failure feels like an identity crisis. So, if leaders aren't born, how are they actually made? Leaders are made the moment someone chooses responsibility before they feel completely ready, not when someone officially labels them. Martin Luther King Jr. was only 26 when he was asked to lead the Montgomery bus boycott. He was young, relatively unknown, and stepping into something far bigger than himself. but he stepped forward because the moment required it. Some people step into leadership for the label, not the responsibility. Elizabeth Holmes built Theranos on false claims about blood testing technology and continued promoting it even as concerns grew. When the company collapsed, it showed how leadership without accountability can be harmful, not just ineffective. True leadership begins when something matters enough to step forward. It starts small, like taking initiative when no one asked you to, or owning a mistake without shifting blame. Instead of asking who seems like a leader, we need to be asking who consistently chooses responsibility. Because leadership isn't revealed in a single impressive moment. It's built in patterns of choosing growth over comfort. Once you understand that, the question stops being whether you were born with it. It becomes whether you're willing to step into it. That decision matters more now than ever. We are growing up in a time that is divided, fast-moving, and uncertain. In times like these, real leadership isn't optional. It's necessary. But if we continue treating leadership like a personality trait, we limit who feels qualified to lead and miss opportunities to see change makers make a difference through effort and purpose. Now, I want you to think about yourself. When you hear the phrase natural leader, do you place yourself inside or outside of that category? And once you decide, what's your next move? I challenge you to choose responsibility. If you aren't sure, try anyway. Because every time the right person stays silent, the wrong person gets louder. In the words of Teddy Roosevelt, in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. Because doing nothing still shapes everything, and often not in your favor. Thank you.